necessary. I want to thank Rob and Judy and Mike and everybody at Stack Bomb who's allowed everyone to be here this week and set all this stuff up. And having done a few events myself, I know it's really a ton of work, and so I appreciate everything you guys have done. Rob even sacrificed his computer briefly to jam a piece of metal in there so we could bring you two of the authors of a book that was written called Pitch Perfect, and it's by Erica Sadoun and Steve Sandy, and it sort of lifts the veil on what we do inside TUA. And talking to other editors at other blogs, it's very much the same at their sites as well. So what I want to tell you guys is what we sort of think of as common sense. It's not necessarily, but this is not marketing stuff necessarily. It's really dealing with people and how to get your app to be fairly considered by people who are really passionate about this kind of stuff. And I think that bloggers, well, I can tell you this much. We have heard from a number of people that when we write about an app, it sees more sales than when Apple features it on the store. And a lot of people, when I tell them that, they're like, no, that can't possibly be true. But what's going on there is that when people go into the App Store, they may just be browsing. They may be looking for something specific. And so when they see that, it's like a billboard on the highway. They aren't necessarily going to act on it right then. When they come to our site, they are much more engaged, and they are ready to hear someone's opinion on whether they should buy something or not. You know, I mean, Apple is going to continue to say, hey, you know, check this out, check this out. And of course, there's a limited window in their store to show people what you do. And I'm sure all of you have run into the problem of, you know, I wish I could explain more about the app or show a video of the app in person, you know, or to people. All of those things are, you know, secondary to getting a recommendation from a friend. And a lot of people, and I think it was somebody at Gizmodo that once said that, you know, we're your nerdy friend who checks out all this stuff and asks, you know, family members say, oh, well, you know, what app should I get? I just got an iPhone. What are the first apps that I should get? And that's really what bloggers are. We are so passionate about these kinds of things. And to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, so you guys know that I'm not just some, like, hired gun. I didn't start in, like, vacuum cleaner sales, although I did do that at one point. My background real quick is when I was 6 years old, my dad bought an Apple II in a bike shop because they didn't have computer stores at the time. And to this day, I still have it. It sits right next to my MacBook Air on my desk. And I also have the manual. And one of the things that really got me into Apple wasn't just playing Star Wars and Integer Basic. It wasn't just the cassette tape of AppleSoft Basic written by Microsoft. But it was the fact that there was clearly the intent by the people at Apple to make a computer that human beings could use without having to learn all these arcane things. And you know, if you think about cars when they first came out, people had to vulcanize the tires, they had to do all this maintenance, they had to do all this garbage. Now, imagine if people had to do that, right? I mean, I don't get my oil changed on time, so let alone vulcanize my tires. So my background is very much in arts and sciences. I actually started in college. I was going to be a microchip architect. I was disgusted at the state of technology at that time, so I said the hell with this, and I became an English major. I spent a couple years in journalism school. I went on to film school. Was one of the first people at film school to use digital film and digital technology to make all these different weird special effects and whatnot. And something about the Apple II I want to mention. If you ever get a chance to read the manual that came with it, the red manual as they call it, there's a little passage in there that actually talks about how you should make your applications, your software applications. We didn't shorten it back then. People had more time, I guess. And make your applications self-evident. Make it clear what the purpose is and how the person uses it. And this is in an era before people made a lot of manuals, but then it very quickly, if you guys remember, you know, Aldous PageMaker. I remember reading Aldous PageMaker manuals, and it was just like, you know, this thick and whatnot. And they got bigger and bigger. as time went on. And now, you're not shipping a manual with this, ever. So that sort of leads me into my first point, which is that the experience is really key. And I find it interesting that a lot of developers can lose sight of this. And I'm all the time complaining to Erica, actually, that it's like, you don't think like a normal human being. You're a developer. You're wired differently. There's nothing wrong with that, believe me. I work with a bunch of comedians also in my spare time. They also are not wired the same as most people. I was going to say right, but they're not right in the head, that's another thing. So in their book, Pitch Perfect, one of the first things that they start to talk about, and I am 100% on board with this, if I had any slides, there would just be 3 points, really. And the first point is, just make it great. Whatever it is that you're making, just make it awesome. And make it so that people can use it. We did a bunch of videos this week with developers, and I find it really interesting how you guys come up with the ideas for apps. How many of you guys wrote an app at any point in your life? It doesn't have to be on the App Store, it could just be at any point. How many of you have written stuff just because it scratched an itch? Yeah, I mean, it's just about everybody, because it's like, if you are making these things, you're like, I don't have something that does this. Well, guess what? I can make it. And what's phenomenal is that Apple gives you these tools that make it easier than ever to build something that fixes a problem that you're having in record time. And you know, I was struck by the number of people who were not developers who made apps that are successful, and they had no programming background. You know, they didn't go get a degree in computer science. They were from all walks of life. So it was easy for them to say, well, as a user, here's what I'm going to build. But you have to put yourself in the mindset of the sort of average person. And I say average person, what I mean is the average person who's actually going to buy an app on the App Store, which is not really an average person. You know, smartphones are huge, obviously, but keep in mind that a lot of people still don't buy a lot of apps. I lost count, but at some point I had something like 3,500 apps on my Mac. I recently archived a few of those and whatnot. That was over a year ago was the last time I counted, actually. And right now I have page after page of folders of things, and I pretty much have to use Spotlight to find anything anymore. So I think it's important that you guys always take a step back, and even before you give your app over to the world, make sure that you have spoken with, as I call them, normies, right? Normal human beings out there, and talk to them. I mean, don't tell them anything. Let them, you know, lock them in a closet, say, use this for 20 minutes, and then come out and tell me, what did you think? If they have problems with something, they're going to immediately tell you, where the hell was the email button? You know, and something that we are constantly frustrated by is that you guys have these incredibly powerful apps, and some of the most basic things are not self-evident. And so that, first of all, I would recommend before you even approach a blogger, because, you know, some of us will try hard to use your app. I mean, I know I try to be probably a little bit more into the app than maybe I should be, and say, well, you know, this person's got a computer science degree, they don't have a design background, this was, you know, I see what they're doing with this, it's cool, but it's not going to be for everybody. And so that's really the first thing, is make sure that what you're handing over to the world, never mind bloggers, but what you're putting on the store is really the best that it can be, and it's intuitive, and it solves a problem, and it works. That kind of goes without saying, but one would hope. At any rate, let's say that you've got this great app, you know, and you've distilled down 500 steps into 4 buttons. And it does this magical thing, and it's got iCloud synchronization, and everything is just seamless, everything's wonderful. You probably spent, you know, anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to a year or more working on this thing. And if you spend less than an hour writing an email that you send out to 600 people, you might as well buy a lottery ticket. And it's going to be cheaper, and your chances of winning are probably better. So that's another thing, is that you have to, my second point on this is give it time. And I mean, give yourself time, first of all. Give yourself time to craft a really great story around this app. We did not do demo videos this year. For one thing, because we like to kind of roll these out through the weeks and whatnot, the videos that we've been shooting here. And I didn't want to shoot something now and then, 800 features get added by December and we show this, oh, look at this great 1.0 app. And I'm like, I'm in version 4 now, you idiot. And you guys move really fast sometimes, so it's very cool, and I want to show that. But what I really found compelling, as I said, was the purpose behind the app. So tell us that. Tell us, if you weren't a traditional developer, or if you are a traditional developer and you found this kid who's in college who's like this amazing designer, you say, you know what, I had this app, it did this stuff, it looked like garbage, this guy came in and he made it look beautiful, and we're able to see that. I guarantee you, we have seen enough apps to where we will know if you worked with someone who has a clue about design. It's immediately apparent. And so, give yourself time to craft a good story around your app. There are, I don't know, how many note-taking apps in the store now, right? How many PDF apps in the store now? It becomes a real problem to differentiate your product with all the other products that are out there. And at the end of the day, bloggers know probably more than other publishers or writers or whatnot who are just like, this is a job, I come in and I do it. It's like the city desk or whatever. Oh God, what's going to come down the line? I got to do this, thing on Evernote, and et cetera, et cetera. Nothing against Evernote, I use it every day. But, it's not a grind for us because we love it. And that's one of the things that really got me into blogging. To rewind a little bit and talk about this sort of human connection, you're dealing with people. The way I got into all this was actually, I started as a commenter on TUAW. And at the time, CK Sample, I think, was editor-in-chief, and Scott McNulty was there, and if you guys remember that, it was Weblogs Inc. at the time. And Jason Calacanis and Brian Alvey started the company. We had the unofficial Google weblog. We had the unofficial Yahoo weblog. We had, I helped launch Download Squad with them. And for better or for worse, AOL has killed all of those off. And I can kind of understand the unofficial Yahoo weblogs. Like, who cares? But, no offense to Yahoo. But we got into this because we loved it. I was a top rated, we used to rate comments, if you can imagine that. And I was a top rated commenter because I was being constructive. It had nothing to do with being prolific. It had to do with being constructive. I wasn't the most prolific commenter. I was the highest ranked by the bloggers. By being constructive and by being helpful, I then was graduated to actually being a blogger. Once AOL acquired us, about 6 years ago, then I got hired full-time. And actually at the time, I managed a whole bunch of blogs. We had a BlackBerry blog, if you can imagine that. I'm glad they killed that off real early. And digital video blog, all these other ones and whatnot. Ultimately, I'm standing alone on top of the unofficial Apple weblog, and it's kind of where I always wanted to be. And so the thing is that think of yourself kind of in that same sort of path, right? You've got this thing that you want to do, and you want to start interacting with people, in other words, you want them to buy your stuff, right? So start participating. If there is an area out there that you're into, I talked to a guy yesterday who had this real estate or a property like inspector thing. He'd go in and they would do estimates, and he could go and very quickly say, oh, okay, this is going to need this much sheetrock, this much, and so on. That guy is already in that world, and so the people that he's talking to are people who are going to use that app. He wrote it for his own benefit, but also for the benefit of people that he was already talking to. So expect to kind of start small and build these connections and continue to talk to those people. So going back to the idea of giving it time. So it's really, really key that you have a plan. And there are plenty of books on marketing and all this sort of stuff. I'm not going to bore you with that. Pitch Perfect, by the way, has a wonderful section of sample pitch letters. Steve and Erica, is that right? These are pitch letters, you would call them? Yeah? I hear them typing. These are pitch letters, right? Sample pitches. You guys can't hear this, sorry. So they actually took pitches that we got from people and have kind of changed them a little bit and put those in the book. And they're great. It's sort of like a sample of the different types of pitches that are out there. And again, it's not just, maybe if you don't have a great story like, my dog died and there wasn't an app for memorial to dogs. So, I made this app and it's got Flickr integration and all this kind of great stuff. If you don't have a great human angle to it, there's still other things that you can do to just explain that, like, this solved the problem and we think that this is the best in its class. So like I was saying about PDF readers and annotators and whatnot, what is it that distinguishes your app from something else? Now another thing about this is, going back to when I first started out at weblogs, a lot of people, I don't know, has anybody ever interacted with Jason Calacanis? Just curious. Anybody ever? No, you've seen him or maybe something like that, right? There were people who were like, oh man, I don't, this guy, he's kind of an asshole. Like, I'm afraid to, I think one of the reasons I got to be full-time was that I told Judith Meskel, who was the GM at the time, I said, I'm not afraid to tell Jason he's full of shit. I mean, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, which is nowhere. And, I'm nobody. But if he says something stupid, I'm not going to be afraid to say, that's stupid. I wouldn't have felt so confident if I didn't know enough about the guy to say, Jason, but 3 weeks ago, on your blog, you said this. And that's something else too. The more niche that you get, the more important it is to find the people in that niche and find out about them. A lot of us became bloggers because we were already writing in some capacity. How many of you guys still have live journal blogs? I'm just curious. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people got started with that. In fact, Christina Warren, who was she blogged with us for a little while. She's now at Mashable. I mean, that was where we saw a lot of her sample work was on LiveJournal. And you can find out about bloggers because A, you can read our work online, and B, you can go back and find their personal blog. It's not creepy, believe it or not, to stalk us if you do it in the right way. And Mike Schramm's over there. This is, by the way, Mike Schramm over here is another one of our bloggers, and he focuses on games and whatnot. But what I'm saying about this is that the more you know about us, the easier it's going to be to come to us and say, hey, you know what? I saw that you're really into these types of things. I have an app about that kind of thing. And so, I do magic, I do comedy and whatnot. I love looking at apps for magicians. And also understand that a lot of us as bloggers have come up with ideas, so you just can't stop it. We've come up with ideas for apps, and we don't necessarily, I'm not a developer anymore, really. I have an appreciation for it, I've done some of it, but there's stuff that I'm into that I'm like, oh man, it would be great if I had an app for this. And in fact, I had a notebook. I do have one app on the store, but I have a notebook full of all these different app ideas right after the store launched. And it's kind of cool to go back and mark through with a big X, somebody made that. Somebody made this one. And it's like 10 times better than I would have done if I had tried to do it. Not to mention that I'd still be writing the damn thing. But yeah, if you look into, now I'm not saying like find our home phone number and call us at 3 in the morning, you know, because you live in Austria and we live in Colorado. But I'm saying that, you know, we have a body of work out there. And so don't come to us and say, I have this really awesome iPhone app that also runs on Android. I could give a shit. I don't use Android, all right? Just pitch me the iPhone. Just pitch me what I'm interested in and focus on what we as people are interested in. And as for giving it the time that it needs, understand that, and it's truly been phenomenal. I mean, everyone at Apple talks about the fact that this whole thing just exploded, right? I mean, we are still sort of in the possibly the tail end, I don't know, but of this sort of big bang expansion of apps. I think actually Mike Lee said that the other night, that it was this like big bang, and then there's going to be this sort of contraction now, I think, and it's similar in many industries, but this is a crazy phenomenon because they don't have to build retail stores, even though Apple did that to sell their hardware, but they didn't have to build any retail stores to give you guys a platform to reach millions of people. And so it's easy enough as you guys, in fact, Kyle Kincaid made a shirt after a tweet that I made the other day. It's like a guy, like a walking sign guy or whatever, and he's sitting down, he's got his laptop open, and the tagline is, submitted while pooping. You could write an app on the toilet and submit it. That's incredible. What other world can you create a product while you're creating another product that no one wants? So, like I said, A, don't make a product no one wants. And certainly don't submit it to us for review. But understand that we are really overburdened. We have so many apps to choose from. And again, it's easy to get burned out. You know, oh man, another document reader, yay. You know, I wonder if it has Dropbox. Oh yeah, it's got Dropbox integration. What do you know? That's not a unique feature. And so please be patient and understand that we try to work through the backlog that we always have. It's somewhat unfair to you guys, I understand, because I know that the way the App Store works, you want to try to get that initial run, you want to try to get like a big number right out of the gate so you can jump up the charts and whatnot, right? Forget about it. Now really, you gotta let it go, because that's awesome if you can do it. But again, it's kind of like winning the lottery, all right? And also, there have been plenty of apps that have done one of two things. They have either become super popular in that initial hit and then faded into nothingness, or they have done nothing for weeks and weeks until suddenly they explode with popularity. So be cognizant of the fact that, you know, the top charts and whatnot are a great avenue, but I don't know, I was reading something that Phil Schiller said, and it was funny because he was talking about, you know, well, we've got all these avenues of promotion for developers. We've got the charts, and we've got little screens, and we've got little tiles and buttons, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you guys sound a little bit defensive when you start talking about this, because it's like, that's not necessarily, like, that's not all there is in the universe, which I understand Apple likes to think that they're everything in the universe, but, you know, there's this world outside of that. So if there's a blog that is a real estate blog, and this person you happen to know, or, you know, you happen to read their site, and this guy says, I use an iPhone, talk to that guy about your real estate-oriented app. That's the dude to talk to. That's the guy to pitch to. So that's a big part of it, is understand that we would like to time everything in a way that helps you guys. But we also have lives, and we have kids, and we have dogs, and we have, you know, dental emergencies, and all kinds of things that come up in the course of a day. So we really, really want to help you guys. And to that, it brings me actually to my third point, which is basically just be a mensch. I mean, be a human being. Be a decent human being. And this is really kind of, I mean, this goes back to netiquette. It goes back to being a human being, which is as old as time itself. Being understanding that, like, you know, we are overburdened and we are pressured and we have all these other obligations and whatnot. We do want to help you out. We really, really do. And so one of the things I love about Mike Schramm over here is that I see him, especially when I see him in person, when I see someone pitch an app to him, and he goes, well, this is good, but you know, there's this other app that does this, and like if you did this, and da-da-da-da. He's critical because he's trying to help you. If he didn't give a damn, he would go, looks nice. Good luck. No one's going to write a blog post that says, looks like a nice app. Cool. If they do, you're screwed. So yeah, so be a decent human being. This goes back to, again, it's like, don't look up our home phone numbers. Don't pester us every day via direct message on Twitter. I'll tell you guys, as a rule, it's rare that I will follow your company. If, you know, I appreciate the fact that, like, and it's just a, you know, it's a fact of nature that we will have Twitter accounts for companies or for apps or whatever, and that's a good way for customers to get information about your app, especially if you say mean, nasty things about certain politicians like I do. You know, you want to separate out your personal proclivities with, you know, the app that you're trying to sell, because you don't want to offend people and whatnot. I mean, you know, it's like the most horrible people may buy your app, but guess what? You just took some of their money. Awesome. And that's fine. So I understand that you have to have a Twitter account for your company. Like I said, the chances are I'm not going to follow it. I think I follow like a little over 1,000 people or something right now, and that's too many. You know, and I know a lot of those people, so it's difficult for me to just wade through the personal relationships that I have, let alone the business relationships. Now, we do have a Twitter account that we use at AltWWDC to follow companies and developers who, you know, I think a good example of someone who has actually broken news on Twitter is Stephen Tron Smith. Right? He finds something and he's like, man, check this out. Click, there's this thing, next thing, you know, 30 minutes later, Max Story says a story about this going on or whatever. And that's cool, that's fine. I don't know that that's a marketing technique you should use to draw attention to yourself, and I certainly don't recommend anybody break like NDA just to get attention for yourself or anything. But I think it's worth noting. I think it's worth noting that your company account should have some personality though. And don't just say, hey, version blah 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 is out. Because as you all know, Apple has a mechanism for telling people when new versions are out. So it helps to have some personality, and we do track you guys in some regard. I know that Boinks actually may be one of the few companies that I do follow, just because you guys come out with new product and whatnot. If you're a 1 or 2 person shop and you only have like 1 or 2 apps or whatnot, it's even less likely. But if you have a, if you have a huge portfolio, or you're always coming out with some new cool stuff that does different things, maybe more likely, but a lot more likely even on a AltWWDC account. And something else to understand about dealing with us as people is that, and I don't know if you guys know this, but it's in terms of like full-time with benefits positions at AltWWDC, it's me and Dave Caleb. And Dave is our morning editor, and he gets up with the I don't know, what do they have in Cape Cod? The oysters? Whatever? I don't know. The ducks?
Seagulls.
The seagulls, there we go. And his children. And, and he and Kelly Hodgkins basically do the morning shift. And Kelly Hodgkins, by the way, is our app editor. So if you're looking to get a hold of somebody to try to queue something up, she's the person to talk to. we had to do that because just managing the flow of all this stuff has become incredible. It's becoming incredible. But understand that like everybody else is a contractor and they have other jobs. Now, Mike Schramm is living the dream as a full-time blogger, but he splits his time between TUAW and Joystick. And I don't know how many of you guys read Joystick, but they don't review a lot of iOS games. Their audience tends to be more console heavy, I think, right? And PC games and that sort, but really console. I guess you guys get the majority of your folks do console games. And so keep that in mind, that these folks may have a day job, you know, doing something else. But, you know, what I just told you is actually very valuable information in that Mike writes for Joystick. Guess what? He likes video games, right? I wish I had time to play 10% of the video games I have purchased on the App Store. I probably have 4 gigs of games that I've not even opened once on this damn thing. And it sucks because I love games. I briefly taught game design as well. And I would love to play more of them, but you know, I have to split my time between taking care of 2 kids, you know, managing the house. I live, I'm also single, so I do my own laundry, do my own dishes. I don't even own a dishwasher. And so it's a lot of stuff through the day. And then I have the usual corporate crap that I have to deal with at AOL. And, but I enjoy the hell out of stuff that makes my life easier. So productivity apps, I'm a big fan of those. Note-taking apps that are amazing. I really dig those. And again, that's stuff that if you look back at the things that we've written about, those are the things that you can then say, oh, you know, this is the productivity guy. I can tell you right now that if you want to pitch, for instance, Dave Kalo on an app that is a getting things done type app, forget it. He uses pen and paper, like some sort of caveman. But he gets things done, and so it works for him. And that's another thing too, is that you guys have to understand, and this goes all the way back to just making something great. You may think that what you built is the best thing ever, that it can replace, you know, concrete or whatever. But it's not going to be true for everybody. So when a blogger comes back and says, you know, I didn't really find this very useful, take it with a grain of salt, because that's their opinion, and we are bloggers. We try to, you know, we give opinions. And then B, go back and do some soul searching and think, is this really the best? Is this really something that people outside of myself can use? And then C, maybe find another blogger to talk to. And I mean that very sincerely, and I don't mean that you should like pester all of us, because here's something that's a major gripe that we have, is when you go to Blogger A and you say, hey, here's my app, you know, and maybe you follow each other on Twitter and you're DMing them and you say, hey man, I just made this app, check it out. And they go, well, I don't use these kind of apps or whatever, and they go, oh, okay, fine. Then you go to Blogger B, and that just goes down a hole, and you never hear back from them. And then you go to Blogger C, and they're like, I really don't have time to review this. And then you go to Blogger D, this is all the same site. By Blogger D, the word is starting to get around that you're pestering people. So again, what I suggest is try to find the best point of contact first. If you know somebody isn't into something, don't pitch them first. You know, first of all, try to find somebody who actually does the scheduling for everybody else. And not all blogs do that. I mean, a lot of them are just kind of like, you know, go find the stuff that you're interested in and pick it out and write about it. But give them the time to consider your app, and then give them the time also to give you feedback. And take that feedback to heart. You know, one of the best things you could do is write an app that someone is resistant to in general. Like if there was a note-taking or GTD app that Dave Kalo started using, that's probably the best app in the universe. If you can get him off of pen and paper, holy cow, you've got something there. So that's something else, is you're not going to win converts by badgering people. ever, 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 ever. Just ask Windows, okay? Or ask Clippy, actually. So yeah, so I have waxed poetic for almost a friggin' hour, and I'm almost out of knowledge. So I want to open it up to questions here in a minute, but I also want to say on a final note that, like, we do really, really love what you guys do. I know Mike was working on his, what's the name of your app again? Antithesis. I can't believe no one took that name before you did. So Antithesis. If you check out Antithesis, it's a pretty simple thing, but it grows on you, and it's got some neat little spins and whatnot. But the cool thing about this is that Mike's background is not programming. And he said himself, I remember early on, like when the App Store first came out, you would like want to make a dice rolling thing, right? And I was starting to make some graphics for you and whatnot. And then it just kind of faded out. You're like, man, this is too hard. How many times did you stop and start the development process? 5 or 6 times. Yeah. And then you quit. Those 5 or 6 times. And then finally came out with this app. That's how much we love this stuff. Is that we will 5 or 6 times through a couple of years, 3 years, we'll try again and again and again to make stuff that we want to make. So I can tell you from my own personal experience that, like I said, having a notebook, write all these great ideas, to see you guys set those up and knock them down is the biggest thrill of my life. It truly is. And like I said, I've been using software since I was 6 years old. And trying to write software since I was 6 years old. So I'm like the worst developer in the universe. Which is, again, why we have such great admiration and respect for you guys. And when we see that there's been time and care taken, not just in building your app, but in thinking it through, making it useful, and then coming to us and saying, look, I made this thing, I think it's great, and I hope you like it. We will try our very best to respond as fairly and kindly as we can and give you our honest feedback. So, when you see a negative review, please understand that we're trying to help. It's just like, when someone comes to you with a bug report, but it's not really a bug report, it's just an all caps thing saying, I hate you and your dogs and all your other crap. They're, in their way, they're trying to help you as well. And there might be the one thing that you read in there that's like, oh man, I did forget the email button, in my email app. So keep that in mind. But anyway, so that's all I got. I want to see if there are any questions. You've got a chance to ask me anything, and I can ask Steve and Erica something if you want.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's, what's this talking threshold? In a sense, say I meet you today, and for some reason you don't reply. Should I reach you again? If yes, when? In 1 day, 1 week?
That's a good question, and I'm sure it's probably different for each individual. Some people maybe go to hell. First time you pitch me, I look at it, get the hell out of my face, I never want to talk to you again. Those people work at Gawker. No, I'm just kidding. It's a little bit variable, but I would say that 3 or 4 times, if we aren't writing about it, there may be something either wrong with the app or that person just isn't interested in that type of application. And so you may want to try someone else. I think that a big thing there is if they don't respond back to you, then that could be very difficult. And I would, at that point, look for one other person at the site and do a little research and see if they're really into something, and go and approach that. Or like I said, if we have an app editor, talk to them directly and say, hey, I sent you a tip. It's really just a question of follow-up. So you say, look, I sent this about a week ago, and I just want to make sure you guys got it. And if you have any interest in this, or if you have any follow-up questions, please get back to me. We appreciate that sort of gentle nudge. And in fact, I'm all the time telling people, it's like, listen, if you don't see this on the site in a week, remind me. Even though I use OmniFocus, I wish I used OmniFocus more. It's a question of like actually, you know, opening it up, typing stuff in, and scheduling it, and all that kind of thing. And so I know I have let a lot of stuff slip through the cracks too, because I am very eager, and I get these windows of opportunity where it's like, oh, I can write a bunch of stuff. And so I'm like, hey, you, send me your apps. And I start to play with them, you know, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, look, we just acquired Huffington Post Media, so now I have to go be in meetings for a week, you know. And, you know, that kind of thing happens. But I would say that bug us, obviously the first pitch, the first initial thing has to be great. 9 times out of 10, that should catch our attention. If it doesn't, follow up about a week later and say, hey, did you get that thing I sent you? And then about a week after that, say, just a general reminder, this is on the store, and if you're not interested, just let me know if there's someone else that's interested. So I kind of take a 3 strikes and you're out sort of approach and move on to the next, you know, the next avenue. It's our loss, honestly, if we don't cover the next big thing. So do keep that in mind, that we love you guys, we want to drive sales, but at the same time we screw up. So, yeah.
Can I also throw out there, it's much easier for us to cover something when there's news. So like, if there's something newsy that happened with your app, like an update, or you announced, you know, your number of sales or something like that, if there's something like that, we're much more likely to hit it back again. If nothing's happened but you just want coverage, we're much more likely to say, we didn't cover this the first time, there's nothing new with it, go with it. So, yeah, that's usually what I say when people ask, maybe Steve Andrew.
No, I killed them.
Oh, God.
So they'll be doing no more reviews. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, we just can't hear them, so it's kind of hard to do. But I'm happy to, if you want to get in touch with me, by the way, it's just victor@tuaw.com. And I'm really good at forwarding emails. Not so much replying, but yeah.
How do you guys feel about PR companies who are sending a press release? I find those a lot easier to delete than a personalized email. Hey, Sean, how are you doing?
Yep.
As opposed to those mass emails, you know, everybody gets. That's the thing. I much for a personal email. What do you guys do with the PR emails?
So let me tell you what
Can you recommend these guys use PR companies?
That's a great question because, I mean, you know, obviously there's been, with the explosion of apps, there's been an explosion of PR companies, and particularly that deal with just apps. And I can tell you right now what I do with all PR emails. I have a label, and Gmail automatically files and marks them as read. And that's because it's a wire service. And if I want to go on a boring day, you know, 2 weeks before a keynote when there's really nothing but a bunch of baloney Digitimes rumors going on, and I want to go find something cool to write about, I might go dip in the pool, you know? But again, that's total hit or miss because a lot of these PR companies, and especially if you have a cross-platform app, they're not going to, that's my little brother back there, wave Joe. And if you really want to know what I'm into, get him drunk. That could be dangerous. But yeah, you know, think about it, right? They are working on a short time scale as well, so it's in their interest to write something and then shoot it out to a million different places. Well, if I get a PR email that says, our new blah 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 is now on iPhone, Android, Windows Mobile, Java, Brew, blah blah blah, Symbian, I don't give a damn. In fact, you just diluted your message to the point to where it could be amazing, but I've already checked out. So I would say that, you know, talk to PR companies, and if you get a good vibe from them, if you feel like they're going to treat you really well, try it out. Better yet, talk to other developers and ask, hey, did you ever deal with these guys? Did anything ever come of it? Did it work out for you? But I still 100% agree that the personal approach is so much better. And it just goes back to, you know, being people. And I think PR serves an absolute need. I think it serves a purpose. But I think particularly in the blogging world where you're talking about people who are going to make, you know, opinionated claims and statements, having a PR company which is designed to try to give an opinion already is probably not a great idea.
And a follow-up to that, if you're a PR company, it's sending a PR good morning to WWDC, fire them.
Yes, absolutely.
Idiotic PR company. You find who those people are, fire them.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing is that, and the good news for you guys has been because there's so much money that's been generated around the App Store, there are companies that are boutique shops that focus, and some focus on iOS primarily. They should have an awareness of the news cycle in Apple land. It's not that hard. They announce this crap. I mean, it's like just read any blog ever. You can watch on YouTube and you can tell when stuff happens. I mean, this is not difficult, but a lot of PR companies, again, because these people are overworked and they're trying to hit every single thing in the world, they don't pay attention to it. So,
what do you think is most surprising about demographics of Koala's audience and like the macros and those types of sites? What's most surprising about that demographic?
Well, I don't exactly know what the demographics of some of the other sites are, because it's hard, even for us. I take pride in the fact that we don't do a lot of sort of profiling of our people. Like, we don't require a login or anything like that. Although, early on they wanted people to log in with AIM and all this garbage, and I'm like, no. But I can tell you this. One thing that I'm struck by is that at Tua, we have a very wide breadth of audience. In other words, our readers aren't just you guys. They're not just developers. We get a substantial number of people, and I can tell you this because the emails that we get through our tip line are things like, I ordered a MacBook Pro and you didn't deliver it. Is this Facebook? We get, everybody from grandma to grandma's grandkid who's writing the app that she didn't realize she just bought. We could have gotten a promo code for it. But, and shame on him for not giving it to her. But yeah, we have a really wide, a wide berth of audience. I do find that we have this sort of like stretch, and we have a lot of young, like teenagers and whatnot. Who read us, and then we have a substantial older population that reads us as well. And that may just be because we've been around. I think some of it may be because we have a 4-letter domain, and it's just like accidentally someone maybe fell asleep on the keyboard. I don't know. But yeah, so that's something to pay consideration to. I think when you're crafting your PR message, if you're a one-man band, is consider Gizmodo tends to have, this I can say, Gizmodo tends to have a fairly young, edgy, sarcastic, sort of audience for the most part, in terms of their hardcore readers. Mashable tends to have a sort of like, again, it's that normie audience. I mean, they've geared themselves towards people who actually don't follow tech every day, and because that stuff's shared voraciously all across, Facebook and Twitter and stuff, and people who wouldn't even read Mashable normally will end up reading an article at some point in their life on Mashable. So, keep that in mind. You've got the sort of general audience, and then you've got people like ours. The people who do come to us, however, do tend to be ready to buy something. And what about you guys? Do you have a young audience at the Loop or older audience? What do you think?
The Loop is, it tends to be more middle-aged, around generally the same demographic as what you're seeing too. Not as much young folks as you do, but we don't cover as much of the gaming and the iOS type gaming that you guys do.
Right.
So it skews towards it. The other great thing about your site and the Loop, it skews towards more conversation. People who are willing to get on your forums and your comments and have a discussion in the comments too, which can drive a whole lot of other ideas for people too. I think that's even more interesting.
And that is a great point too, by the way, guys. When we write about your app, and I say this taking a big breath first and reading the comments, I think we use Livefire now, by the way, which I can tell you if you're ever interested. And this is not a paid endorsement. I don't know if we get any revenue. I don't really care if we get any revenue off of Livefire or anything. But I will tell you that the integration was seamless. They are a great group of people to work with. They work really, really hard, and it's a comment system, and I know the Next Web uses them as well. It's great people, great system. But the thing is that if you go in and look, some of the best apps that we found were apps that people mentioned in the comments. Like, hey, you wrote about this, but have you ever considered this? So that's something too. Now, don't spam the comments. If it's a post about like Steve Jobs' motorcycle, don't come tell us about your PDF reader. Okay? But absolutely, you know, if we didn't cover your app, and especially if you've emailed us and we cover like a competitor, feel free to come in and say, as an alternative, you know, you notice that you know this doesn't do this, mine does that, and that's cool. That's fine with me. Just you know, be careful about it. Anything else? Yeah.
Would you recommend that anyone pitching an app puts a promo code in that initial email that they send to you?
That's a great question about the promo codes. You guys are still limited to what, like 50 a month? Yeah. Really? Yeah. Oh God. So no, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. You know, it seems like an easy thing. Mike, how do you feel about that?
I will say, I will kind of agree that you shouldn't. And as a developer who's giving out promo codes, I will also agree that you probably shouldn't give them away that freely. But I would say that maybe we're bragging. TWW is one of the sites that you could probably spend one on at least. And I will say I'm much more likely to actually go and get in that when I get a promo code. And that, maybe that's a bias thing, but like I have tons and tons and tons of apps, and what I generally do is like once or twice a week, I just get all the promo codes that I've got, and I just go and download it, it's free. And so if you send me a promo code, I'm much more likely to put it on my devices. TWW, you can probably do that. Other sites, and even TWW, if I look at your email and I say, this app looks cool, I do email back. And I do it quite a bit, even for apps that I'm writing about. I say, hey, this looks interesting, can I check it out? Get a promo code. So it's up to you, but yeah, TWW can spend one on it.
This is why this is actually why we keep Mike around, because he actually follows through with stuff. So that's great. And the fact that he actually downloads the stuff. I mean, I really feel guilty. And that's not something you want to do to somebody, is I really feel guilty, especially when I go back through my email and I saw somebody send me a promo code like 60 days earlier. And believe it or not, I do go back and I have email. I mean, I get an ungodly amount of emails. So I go back once in a while, like on a plane or whatever, on the toilet, and go through my email. And well, you just feel great about sending those emails now, don't you? But yeah, be judicious with that. Like I said, you know, don't send a promo code to Joystick when your app is a PDF reader. So I think that's the key right there. It does eliminate some friction in that we don't have to get back to you. And one thing I would say that is if your app is very much a pick up and play kind of thing, it's a real simplistic sort of thing, you might be better in sending that promo code because there's not a lot of explanation or whatnot. Or if you have a really good hook, you know, you have this amazing story and whatnot, you know, maybe. It's a tough call, but I frankly would more often than not do it. Yep.
Talk about this, whether you agree with this or not. Is there any, I don't believe there are, any well-respected, well-traveled, paid-per-view websites? In other words, should these guys look at those pay-per-view websites?
Oh, where if you pay them, they'll write a review for you? No.
Never.
Never ever do
Next
that.
question.
Yeah, they're the absolute scourge of our business.
Yeah.
And a lot of developers think that because the guys talk about how much traffic they can get, but there's not a single respected one out there, is there?
No, I cannot think of a single one. And, you know, if you just think about it in terms of context, right? For us, it doesn't seem like life or death stuff. You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, it's an app and they paid this guy to review this crappy little platformer game or whatever that has, you know, 2 colors in it or whatnot. Think about if somebody did that for a restaurant review. And then you went and you took your family there and you all got food poisoning. Right? So that's the thing. I would never ever pay somebody to give a review of your app, no matter how glorious it was going to be. Alright. Kyle, did you have a question or no? I'm just kidding. I'm shaming him. He's so focused. Alright. Any other questions? Yeah.
Slightly related to this idea of fake reviews, do you see the distinction between tech bloggers and tech journalists and what they say, and then take it to the level of D20, and recently Mike Daly had an issue with Wall Street Journal journalists? I mean, there are different ways to also pay reviewers to review your products, whether it's like access or being allowed, giving some sort of source of information first. I mean, do you see the lines blurred between technical and journalists? Tech journalists might be kind of professional, but are they really?
I wish Mike Harrington were here to answer that question, but he's no longer with the company. I don't know. You know, I like I said, I spent 2 years in journalism school, and I quit because at UT journalism, like I spent 2 years and they never once taught me how to interview anyone, and so I wasn't getting bang for my buck. So I became an English major and learned to write fiction. Blogger, journalist, what does that mean? At this point, like, I don't know. I mean, I read Jay Rosen and whatnot, and I try to think about this stuff once in a while, and like, my personal attitude is, you're better off talking to someone who's truly enthusiastic about what they're doing and truly has the deep knowledge. And that's one of the things I'm really proud about it too. It's like, most of my people are not traditional journalists. We do have a few. Mel Martin is an award-winning journalist. Megan Levy works at a newspaper. In fact, she's busy all this week because of the Sandusky trial. These are people who have that background and have that training. Guess what? When they write a blog, you can't tell the difference between their stuff and Mike's stuff or my stuff, So the people who are passionate are going to pick up on your stuff, and I think they're going to do a better job of explaining it to the audience that you're trying to get to, unless your audience is literally, everyone on the planet. And so that's where journalists are really good, because they sort of are able to take a step back, and that's supposed to be their job anyway, is to take a step back and say, here's what this is, and from grandma to grandkid, I can explain how it might pertain to you. But we constantly try to elevate the level of our reporting. And so Jay Rosen actually a couple of years ago at South by Southwest had a great line that was, bloggers and journalists are each other's ideal. Because a journalist asked a guy who's covering the city council meetings, would you like to write opinions for the paper? Of course. We all have something we want to say. We all have a voice. So journalists want to write opinions, and bloggers want to be respected like journalists. So it's, to my mind, it's 50-50. In terms of, getting access or whatever, listen, if it costs a plane ticket to fly somewhere that Walt Mossberg is going to be, and you have this really kick-ass piece of hardware that's going to change his life, do it. But don't expect to hand him a $100 bill and have him write about it. He'll kill you. He's small, but he is strong. Okay? All right, are we wrapping up? Okay, any other questions? Okay, guys, thank you very much.